Hi, Matt Wilson here with another look at a 60s band which lasted into the 70s. This is going to be an examination of the careers of the Jefferson airplane and the Jefferson Starship in the 60s and the 70s only, and all the offshoots. And there was a lot of them. Hot Tuna and the Paul Kantner albums and the Yorma solo albums and whatnot, Bodacious DF and Manhole, whatnot. I have everything in front of me for once. The only thing I could not find was, rather randomly, a Hot Tuna album called Yellow Fever, I think it's called. Anyways, oh, and then Double Dose, the live album from '78. I have that on a download, so I can't show you that. But everything else should be in front of me, so there should be no frustration from me, for looking at these things. This is a Jefferson airplane shirt I'm wearing. It's old, been through the wash too many times. And this, before I forget it, I'm gonna put the phone up. That's an airplane and Great Society. First printing poster from 1966, Great Society. Of course, this is when Grace was singing with the Great Society before she had joined the airplane. Okay, so before I start, a bit of a preamble. I am a big San Francisco / Bay Area devotee of all that acid rock, all that counterculture, hippie stuff. I love that stuff. I mean, so if that's not your thing, clearly you're not going to be watching this video. But I love all the major bands. In fact, one day I'll do a show of the 12 bands that I consider to be the 12 best Bay Area bands, because they weren't all from San Francisco, obviously. From that time, from the late 60s through the early 70s. So today, Jefferson Airplane. I'm going to say, because the Grateful Dead, I think, are the only real competition in this area. I'm going to say that the Jefferson Airplane were the best band from San Francisco in the 1960s on album. Now, notice how I worded that, because I'm not going to get into the who were better live. There were so many. There's lots of competition. There's Quicksilver and the Dead and Big Brother, but on album. So that is from 1966 through 1969. I'm going to say the Airplane were more consistent than any other band. That does not mean that every year for those years that they released the best album, but consistently they ranked, they released albums of high quality. All right, so let's start. Jefferson Airplane Takes Off. This is just the standard stereo remaster. This album was also on, has a mono CD, but I actually prefer the stereo mix. All right, this is really cool. It's got, I'll get the glare off. It's got bonus tracks, some of which appeared later on Early Flight. This is a great examination of that time in the band's career when they had Skip Spence on drums, who later formed Moby Grape, Signe Tolle Anderson on vocals, pre-Grace Slick. It's a wonderful little, what would you call this? Kind of a pre-psych folk rock album. I mean, when you listen to it, it's definitely folk rock of that era with some acoustic textures, but you can tell it's kind of got one foot in the emerging psychedelic scene, which is right around the corner. It's hard to call these songs overtly psychedelic, although something like God, where is it? Run Around? No, Run Around This World, which is a bonus track. They're talking about been fantastic trips, and they censor that out. So they were thinking in terms of drugs at this time, but I don't really hear it in the music that much. Strongly recommend this CD if you've never heard it. From a time, 66, when there really weren't that many American bands who had properly responded to the British invasion by this point. And in the Bay Area, in San Francisco, There was the We Five who had released stuff before this. There was the Beau Brummels, of course, whom I like a lot. But this album is better than anything that those bands had done on LP at this point. Okay. Now we come to their magnum opus. This is Surrealistic Pillow. This is an old early 90s RCA gold disc. You get the mono and the stereo. I do think I like the album better in mono, but if you want to hear a mono mix of that on CD, get this. Get the Mobile Fidelity version. That's mono. It doesn't have all the extraneous echo that was applied to the stereo mix. And if you just want a standard stereo CD, the current remastered one, which has been out for a while, with bonus tracks again, is real good. Boy, I'm having a hard time not having the glare on them today. This is my favorite San Francisco album of the 60s. It's got some heavy competition, especially for one who has thought about this as much as I have. In fact, even for this year, 67, the first Moby Grape album is a classic to my ears too. But I think this narrowly pips it, right? I mean, this is as good as that, and it's got hits. Still, with the acoustic textures, still got one foot in folk rock. You know, I mean, so many of the San Francisco bands were folkies, really, until the British invasion, until A Hard Day's Night. You know, they could see that. And bands could come out and, you know, they could do cool music and they could get girls play electric instruments. And so they all put down their acoustic instruments and their coffee house repertoire, and they picked up electric. That's what Jerry Garcia did. That's what Jorma Kaukonen did, you know, probably a million other ones too. So, and you still hear that in the first two Airplane albums. But Pillow, yeah, if you're interested in the Airplane and you want to pick up a non-compilation album to see if they're your thing, that's the one you should get. All right. Also in 67, After Bathing at Baxter's, this also has a true mono mix, and much like Saucer Full of Secrets, which I was telling you guys about in the Pink Floyd video, this does not have a mono CD. Again, these remastered discs all have bonus tracks. They're all good. If you just want to hear the stereo versions of these albums, this is the way to get them. I'm not going to quibble with the sound quality. This is their most psychedelic album. It didn't sell, though, the way that Pillow did, or the way that Crown of Creation would the next year. So I think it was probably seen as somewhat of a disappointment by RCA. And again, the Airplane were never quite this psych again. I like everything on here. I mean, Spare Change goes on a bit. That's just a kind of a jam. But all the songs, all the normal length songs are great. And the first one, Ballad of You, Me, and Punil, that was almost a top 40 hit. That made the early 40s, I think. And as far as I know, you can't get the mono mix of that 45 on CD. So the Airplane people have some explaining to do with regards to this album being on CD in mono. All right, 1968, Crown of Creation. This is another great one. And this, I just synced to this with a friend of mine the other night, so it's fresh in my mind. We also synced on Black Cat Bone, which is a music forum that I frequent, which you can look up online, blackcatbone.com. We just synced Surrealistic Pillow yesterday. Anyways, Crown of Creation, all the guys in the band are represented on here. Even the drummer, Spencer Dryden, who replaced Skip Spence, gets his little minute and a half, or over 1 minute kind of instrumental song, Kushingura, which is probably filler, but even he gets this. But Marty, Paul, you know, Grace, Yorma, they all get their fair share on here, and it's good. I love the introduction of the 3 songs. Lather, about Grace wrote that about Spencer, her boyfriend at the time, the drummer. Lather, In Time, and Triad are that's a great triad. Of course, is the David Crosby song about a menage a trois that the Byrds recorded but wouldn't release, but the Airplane had no problem with it. I don't know who has the definitive version, probably the Airplane. So a strong album. Here's an old Mobile Fidelity version. Sounds really good. All right. Okay, then we have Volunteers. I like Volunteers better than Crown of Creation. In fact, I'm going to say that if I like Surrealistic Pillow as the best Airplane album, in terms of their second best album, it's either this or Baxter's. Lately, the past few years, I've been leaning more towards this. Probably because possibly that there's no mono mix of Baxter's on CD. This is great. I keep showing you guys the bonus tracks. You can freeze the frame there and see what's on there. Here is an old Mobile Fidelity gold disc, just like Crown of Creation. And what I really like too is this Mobile Fidelity redid it on an SACD. It does have better sound. It's not the best recorded album in the first place, so it's not going to be of audiophile quality, but it's great. And cut for cut, this is among the strongest albums that they ever made. They did a set at Woodstock that year. I usually have the Woodstock poster behind me, but now it's the Airplane poster, and it's great. I love that set. It's loud. It's rocking. I don't have that to show you because I have the whole Woodstock box set in my closet, which I'm not going to bring out. Maybe I'll do a Woodstock show one day. But anyways, love Volunteers. The last really good album that the Airplane made. Okay, going into this. Oh, well, not going into the 70s yet. Bless Its Pointed Little Head. Great live album. It's just a single disc. Again, bonus tracks. Could have been a double, I'm sure. There's been lots of posthumous live Airplane released. I don't have everything, but I got a few, and I'm going to show you when I finish their discography here. I'm going to show you some of those posthumous live CDs, but this is my favorite in terms of a officially released live Airplane album. This is a compendium of various shows. I think at both the Fillmores, East and West, but yeah. Love it, love it, love it. Okay, they didn't have an official album in 1970 except for The Worst of Jefferson Airplane, which was just a compilation with nothing new on it. But I'll tell you what they did do in 1970. They did a wonderful 45 Mexico, when the flip side was Have You Seen the Saucers? Great two-sided 45 that it wasn't on the Worst Of. Now, it could have been released after The Worst Of, for all I know, but it's, I don't think even subsequent CD issues of The Worst Of has those 2 songs as bonus tracks, but I could be wrong because I don't have that CD. In 71, we have Bark. Bark, it's okay. Now, this was not part of the reissue program that I've been showing you guys on CD. There are no bonus tracks on Bark. I'm going to say this is an average Airplane album. No Airplane album from the 60s is worse than this. They're all better than this. This isn't to say this is a lousy record, but by this point, they had split up. You had Hot Tuna, you had Paul Kantner doing projects with Grace, and I'll get to all that in a second. The Airplanes should have stayed together. Like perhaps CSNY or the Beatles or whoever, when bands break up and they do interesting work apart from the band, I don't know how you guys think about it, but my mind cannot help but think, well, what if those would have been band songs instead of solo projects or duo projects or whatever? So I think Bark suffers from they were simply spreading their talents too thinly amongst other projects. There's not, without merit. I think that Jorma's, Pretty As You Feel, that's another one that was almost a top 40 hit. It's basically I'll tell you a little anecdote. That's a Joey Covington, or he co-wrote it. He was a third drummer. He replaced Spencer Dryden. I met him. He used to drink. He's since passed away at Barney's Beanery here in LA, and we used to have what the English called jolly ups, and we'd go, and all us guys who live in LA who were music lovers, and there was usually some Brits among us, and that's why we called those meetings such. And we go drinking and just talking music for hours and hours, and whatever else we would indulge in. But Joey Covington was there a few times at Barney's, and I got to talking to him once, because I don't usually walk up to famous people and initiate conversation, because I always figure, what am I going to say that they haven't heard a million times before? But I was talking to him about Pretty As You Feel, and I said something about how it didn't make the top 40, and he disagreed. He goes, "Oh yes, I did," and I wasn't going to argue with him, because according to the Billboard charts, it did not. It made 40 something, I think. I don't remember now, but it's interesting. It's for some reason that stayed with me, because it's like the way that an artist views his success is different sometimes than the actuality. But the Jorma cut I was going to tell you about his third week in the Chelsea, and it's about the band kind of breaking up, and it's really good. It's definitely a highlight on here. Okay, so we now come to what I think is the Airplane's worst album, Long John Silver. Again, not part of the reissue program, no bonus tracks. I struggle to find any great songs on here. There's some decent ones, but has a cool looking album cover. But, the tank was empty by this point. Also recorded in 72, but not released until 73, was 30 Seconds Over Wonderland, which is, it's not Butts' point to the head, but it's better than it has any right to be. I thought the Airplane were always an interesting band live. I have lots of, CDs and footage on DVDs and Blu-rays, and so I always enjoy seeing them live. And the next year, after the band was defunct, we have Early Flight. There's Japanese discs you can get of this, which are remastered. This is just a regular CD, but it's got some good stuff on here. High Flying Bird was almost a folk standard at the time. It's got Run Around This World, In the Morning, JPP Mixed Up, and B Blues is a good one. Go to Her is a good one. And this one has Mexico and Have You Seen the Saucers? So at the time, this was a worthy release. Certainly better than Long John Silver. I'm even going to say better than Bark. Cheesy album cover with a pterodactyl. Early Flight, get it? But I like it. Okay, before we leave the Airplane behind, I'm going to show you just what I have of those live releases I was hinting at earlier. This is live in Fillmore East. It's pretty good. Again, reading with this with my glasses, I'm pretty sure this is 68. No, I need a lot more light to be able to read that. Wild Time, My Rabbit Thing, Today, Fat Angel, Watch Out. I'm pretty sure it's 68, but I can't recall. So, interesting. Here's one I didn't play a lot, but I know a guy who really likes this. This is live at Fillmore East of 69. What's that called? Sweeping Up the Spotlight. That's what it says. I don't recall the sound quality being that great on here, but it's interesting. From 69, not as good as the Woodstock show. But there you go. Here's one that also I don't think sounds good, on Charlie Winterland from 72. This is a double disc. I haven't played this one in a long time, so I can't tell you how it compares to 30 Seconds Over Wonderland, also from 72, but 2 discs, good track selection. Maybe not essential, but interesting. And then we have some releases that came out just not that long ago. of which I did not buy all of them, but I got 3 of them here. This is the last show that Sidney Anderson did with them in '66. I liked it, you know, but in '66, a lot of these San Francisco bands had not really perfected their live jamming, improvisational, acid-drenched show. You know, they're still playing clubs here. So this is just more like a little, you know, snapshot of the history. You know, this is still with, I'm sure this is still with Skip Spence. I mean, that's, oh no, well, that's Spencer Dryden on the cover there. So maybe he was already in the band. And I want to say we have Ignition. Well, I know that Grace's first show was released on CD. Not sure if this is it. Sorry, guys. Probably should have looked before I started the camera on my phone, but I liked it. I'll tell you about these bands in '66, these San Francisco bands who were so celebrated for being live acts. And I'll do a show one day on these guys. 13th Floor Elevators were playing in the Bay Area, mostly San Francisco at that time. I think just based upon that Live at the Avalon disc in the big Sign of the Three-Eyed Men box set, that the Elevators could have blown away any of the San Francisco bands at that time in '66. You know, that just seems to be more exciting music than the live Airplane, Quicksilver, or Dead shows that I've heard. All right? And the last one I have is this Return to the Matrix in '68. I liked it. But they were a bit better in '68 than they were in '67. You know, they played at Monterey, and if you get the big Monterey Pop box set on CD, the big yellow one, you know, I don't know if that's the whole Airplane show, but since they did play shorter sets at Monterey than they did Woodstock, that might be the whole Airplane show. It's good. This might be a bit better, and then they were a bit better still in '69. You know, they did progress as the years. So did the Dead. All right. So, before I say goodbye to the Airplane, I want to show you this. This is Jefferson Airplane Loves You. It is a triple disc. Yeah, triple disc set that came out in 1992. I liked it at the time. You know, I don't think it's ever been upgraded in terms of the sound, but the sound was fine then. And it has a lot of stuff on here, which is interesting. But it's the only time, I think, that the Airplane ever got any kind of big, you know, retrospective. A lot of times in the 90s, you had 4-disc box sets for major bands. This is a 3. But, you know, their discography wasn't that big, you know. So I'm going to say this is probably just for completists only. I wouldn't say just get this and nothing else. But I liked it. It's got a different version of Go to Her than the one that's on the... that's the bonus track on their first album. This one Grace sings and the other one was Signe. So I do believe that's it for the Airplane. Now before we leave the '60s behind, I want to briefly talk about Great Society. My God, you'd think I would have these things. Oh, here we go. All right. Great Society was, of course, the band that Grace Slick sang with before the Airplane. They never recorded an album. They only recorded the 45, you know, Someone to Love, with Free Advice as the flip side. I like it. I think it's a great version. It's not fair, I guess, to compare it to the Airplane's version, but you know. And then I read Darby Slick's book, Someone to Love or Somebody to Love. He was the brother of Jerry Slick. Grace was married to Jerry, and Darby was in love with Grace. Who wasn't? And then when the band broke up, you know, he began to study Eastern culture and stuff like that. But I enjoyed the book. This Born to Be Burned is a bunch of demos recorded that the band did. Most of it is only of mild interest to, you know, lovers of this kind of stuff. People like me would buy this, right? But I can't, in all honesty, recommend it to you unless you have a predilection for this stuff. I think Sly Stone produced some of this stuff, you know, Sylvester Stewart. In the 60s, the Great Society released 2 live albums, both of which are on here. Well, they were already defunct as a band, but the record label released 2 live albums of their recordings from the ballrooms in '66 with Grace, to capitalize on her success with the Airplane. I like them. I like this stuff more than I like that Born to Be Burned stuff in the studio. You do get to hear how White Rabbit sounded before she brought it to the Airplane. They didn't do it as well. It's a longer number with a long build-up. I mean, they play for minutes before she even sings. But she wrote that song, which Mojo Magazine once said was the greatest drug song of all time. And there's some little gems in here, which, they never released on any other place other than these 2 live albums. So this one I would recommend you pick up if you're interested in the Great Society. All right. Okay, I believe that's it for the '60s. Hold on 1 minute. I hear my daughter knocking on the door. Okay, so I'm going to move into the 3 albums that Paul Kantner made with Grace in the early '70s. First one has been remastered. It's called Blows Against the Empire. This is the first time that the Jefferson Starship name was used, but this is not the same as the Jefferson Starship that would exist a few years later. This is a good one. This was remastered in the same program, I think, with bonus tracks. Sound quality is good. Sound quality is better on this than the 2 early '70s Airplane albums. He's got half of San Francisco playing on this album, and this is like a concept album about leaving the Earth and going into outer space on a rocket ship, and typical hippie mumbo jumbo, but good stuff. Good stuff. In fact, this is easily the most famous, and I'm going to say the best of the 3 albums he made in the early '70s. This is Sunfighter. Came out in '71. Pretty good. Again, I know guys that swear by this. More hippie stuff. He's using... Remember that Volunteers riff? Da, na, 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 na. He uses that riff again on boy, I wish I could. He uses it twice on here. I think it's When I Was a Boy I Watched the Wolves, but there's also another one. Anyways, I like it. Now at this point I'm thinking some of these songs would have benefited Bark, right? I mean, did we really need this album if we could have had the best of this on Bark? Lovers of this record will say yes. All right. This is the 3rd, and I'm going to say my least favorite, but it's still worthy. This is Baron von Tollbooth and the Chrome Nun. Him and Grace were a couple by then. They had a child, which they sang about the coming of the child on those earlier albums. And David Freiberg, who had been in Quicksilver, is working with them here, and he would be on. He was working with the Jeffersons as well. So this has never been remastered, I don't think, but it's pretty good. '73, so this was released after the Airplane. Okay, just to get it out of the way, what was Marty Balin doing? He had not been on an Airplane record since Volunteers. This is Bodacious DF. This is a band that he led briefly at that time. This album came out in '73. I can't recommend it. It's okay. A couple decent cuts. Drifting is all right. The first number. You get Marty's voice. He was always a great singer. Yeah, I mean, don't bother unless you really are a Marty fanatic, and in which case, if you are, I'm sure you already own this. And Grace had her album, Manhole, which I think was the only album that she did in 70s. He did other albums in the 80s, but that's going to be beyond the scope of this show. I can't really recommend this either. It's just too weird. So this one and Bodacious DF, though they have their fans, especially Manhole, to me are disappointing. I mean, I gotta be honest, you know, when I'm telling you guys about these albums, I can't love unreservedly everything, right? These are okay. I just have them just so I can say that I've got them. All right. Let's talk about Hot Tuna. Jorma and Jack started doing Hot Tuna shows in 1969, live shows before they were recording any studio material. And their album, Hot Tuna, came out in 1970. Remember, that's the year that there was no Airplane album. It's good. It's all live. It's acoustic. It's, you know, it's a lot of blues numbers, Reverend Gary Davis numbers. That's Jorma's hero. Fans of the Airplane like this. Hot Tuna fans like this. This is one of their better efforts. Again, it's too bad the Airplane didn't have an album out in 1970. Now, I would say, imagine an album with the best of this and the best of Blows Against the Empire, but those are such diametrically opposed types of music that they wouldn't have fitted on. But I mean, okay, so say you could have taken the 2 or 3 best cuts from Blows Against the Empire, the 2 or 3 best cuts on here, which would probably have needed to be recorded in the studio, and they would have been blues. And then, Have You Seen the Saucers and Mexico? Maybe you could have had something that Marty recorded with the band before he left, Up and Down maybe. It would have made for an interesting album. But this is a fine album as it stands, and so is Blows Against the Empire. 1971, first Pull Up, then Pull Down. This is also live, but it's electric. All right, he's got Papa John Creech playing with them on the electric violin, who would also contribute to 2 Airplane albums. I like this too. You know, I'm not going to recommend this to everybody, but it's got some, and there's a studio cut on here which is really good. Wow, I should know. Anyways, I can't recall which one it is, but it is good. John's Other is good. Candyman's, I mean, I like it. So the first 2 Hot Tuna albums are both live. This is acoustic, this is electric. I'm probably going to prefer this one, but get them both. Why not? In 1972, we have my favorite Airplane album, Burgers. Burgers. I unreservedly recommend this. I like this more than Long John Silver. Here is here's the 1970s quad mix, which just came out a while back. I love it. Right? There is no Airplane in surround mix that you can buy right now on Blu-ray or DVD or anything like that. I like Burgers. Now, Burgers is really one that would have benefited Long John Silver. Since this is a better album than Long John Silver, you could have taken, you know, 60, 70% of this and 30% of Long John Silver and combined them and made a better album. But that would have probably been too Jorma and Jack heavy for, you know, Paul and Grace's liking, but get that. All right, Phosphorescent Rat, I believe that's 73. By this point, they kind of, or were becoming just a kind of a hard rock boogie band, a lot of guitars. Jorma doesn't play, I don't think, the same on these Hot Tuna albums as he did on the Airplane albums. He's a little more subtle on the Airplane albums. You know, he's you know, his proclivity for a lot of guitars is really indulged on these records. The songs are good. It's a whole album of him singing, though. So Jorma could be like George Harrison, you know. To hear a whole George Harrison album of him singing makes you realize that it was cool to hear him sing the occasional song on a Beatles album, just like it was cool to hear Jorma sing the occasional song on an Airplane album. I don't mind hearing these albums in their entirety because I'm a fan, but I can see why they didn't play us a lot on the radio. America's Choice, which some people like this one more than Phosphorescent Rat. I don't know if I do. I like about half of this. Then again, I like about half of Phosphorescent Rat. Burgers is by far my favorite one. He's always got one or two or three at the most really good songs, and then a few of that they're just okay, and then some that are not even that memorable. I'm missing Yellow Fever. I already mentioned that. It's more or less the same as this, you know, 2 or 3 good cuts. This is 76, Hopkorov. I don't know how to pronounce that. It's another Hot Tuna album. Not too much to say. He's starting to do 2 cover versions now, and they're famous. There's a Buddy Holly cover, but he wouldn't do another studio album by Hot Tuna for a long time. And then there's Double Dose, which is I told you I had that downloaded. That's a live double from '78, which I like. I like that as much as any Hot Tuna studio album, except for Burgers. So, okay. And before we leave Yorma behind, and before we move on to the Starship, I really recommend this. Qua came out in late '73, early '74, depending upon which website you believe. Reissued, remastered, bonus tracks, really good stuff. This and Burgers would be the 2 Yorma releases in the '70s I recommend you pick up first if you're interested in Jorma Kaukonen. He does this with another guitar player, Tom something or another, so it's not just him, but it works. This came out in 1979. It's just called Yorma. It's rather dull. I mean, you know, when I'm playing it, I'll say, oh, it's not bad. It's almost unknown. I mean, it's kind of came and went. Didn't make any kind of a blip anywhere that I know of. I don't think I was even aware of its existence at the time. So when I bought it many years later, decades later on CD, I wasn't that impressed, and I'm still not. Yorma, 1979. No bonus cuts. Okay. One more thing before we move on to Jefferson Starship. This is a vinyl LP called Flight Log. What I liked about Flight Log, came out in '77. It says 66 to 76. What I liked about this is it's not just Jefferson Airplane stuff. The back actually tells you the songs and what albums they're from. There's a Hot Tuna track. There's a track from Blows Against the Empire and Sunfighter. Another Hot Tuna track from Burgers. There's a track from Manhole. You know, there's a track from Baron von Tollbooth and the Chrome. There's a track from Qua. You know, and there's even a track from Dragonfly, the first Starship record, and then one called Please Come Back, which is live, which is an unreleased live track from the Starship that Marty sings, which you can't get anywhere else. So this, you know, is a good little introduction to everything. It's not perfect by any means, but I like it. Okay, I'm trying to keep this down. This is 38 minutes right now, so we're doing fine. All right, so Jefferson Starship. No, I'm not as big a fan of the Starship as I am of the airplane. I'm not that big a fan, but I did want to get everything in the 70s. It's almost like, and I'm projecting here, that, you know, Paul Kantner, who formed the Starship, it's almost like he decided upon the airplane's demise, well, you know, this whole 60s counterculture stuff, this revolutionary stuff didn't work out. You know, there was no great uprising of youth. There was no takeover of American politics. So since the 60s stuff didn't work out and I want to be a working musician, I'm just going to start a new band and we're going to be a 70s rock band. Okay, so Jorma and Jack want to go off and do Hot Tuna. I'm going to get me a young, you know, guitar shredder, and that's what he got with Craig Chiquillo. I got Grace with me. She's my woman, so she'll stay. Maybe I can lure Marty back. He hadn't been around, you know, the airplane in years, and he did part-time. You know, Marty would come and sing these songs, and they were hits, and that's what sold those albums. You know, so was it that calculated? Probably. You know, I mean, nothing against Paul. I mean, he's a survivor. He's no longer with us. But these Jefferson Starship albums, I don't know if they matter in the way that Airplane albums did. This is Dragonfly. Perfectly respectable effort. Came out in 1974, so they didn't miss a beat. The last Airplane album was live, and that had come out in 73, 30 Seconds Over Winterland, and Paul had done his album with Grace in 73. So this is the very next year. He's got his band together, Dragonfly. No hits, but I used to hear Ride the Tiger on the radio. That still sounds good. He's got Marty singing Caroline, a good song, but he would be more successful with that same formula on future 70s Starship albums. So I don't think it's ever been, I'm not sure if they ever did a reissue campaign where the stuff was remastered, but yeah, it's just a CD. It sounds fine. This is Red Octopus. This is easily the most successful record. This is the DCC Steve Hoffman under-recorded again. I was mentioning that with the wall on my Pink Floyd video where the volume is down low. That's how this is. I say this is their best album, and it's good, but there's still filler on here. Fastbug Freddy is good. Miracles was the big Marty Balin sung hit for them that he wrote too, so he really saved this record. Those are the famous ones, but there's nothing bad on here. And I guess if you're gonna get a Starship record that's a non-compilation, it may as well be Red Octopus. Much like Burgers, the quad mix came out recently. Great. This is my preferred way of listening to it. This is the original 70s quad mix, released on Blu-ray now for the first time. For $25 or whatever. You can't beat it. Okay, 1976, Spitfire. Almost like son of Red Octopus. Not as good, but still decent cuts. I think the first three are the best. First three Starship records, and this would be the third one. Again, with my little bad eyes and this font. That's fine. Cruisin's not bad. Marty sings that one. St. Charles is kind of famous. And, God, what's the hit on here? Why can't I read it? Oh, With Your Love. Again, Son of Miracles. I like it, though. I mean, I'll tell you what I did a long time ago. I took the flight log concept, and I said, I'm going to make this into a 4 CDR box set. A kind of box set that maybe Rhino would have put out in the 90s, when they had their four disc, box sets, CD box sets. And I took each LP side, right? And I expanded it into a 80-minute CDR. And I used everything. I used everything that was on here, but I also included everything, from the CDs that I'm showing you. More Hot Tuna, more from the 3 Paul Kantner albums, more Starship stuff. And it was good. Since I was just cherry picking the best stuff, and I stopped after 76 because I was faithful to this concept just 10 years from 66 to 76. Their decline in the 70s wasn't as apparent, because I was only using highlights. And the track list of that is lost to time, but I wish I had it because I wouldn't mind playing it in my car driving around. Earth came out in 78. I think this is the one where there was actually 2 hits, right? Runaway. And what was the other one? Count on Me. Both sung by Marty again. See, Paul could not essay any hits. He had to have Marty on board to sing these songs. And I'm not even sure if they were really indicative of the rest of the albums. But they're, to me, the most enjoyable aspects of these albums. There's some deep cuts which are pretty good, but I like the way Marty sings. He's one of those white guys that can sing in a soulful manner and make it believable, because believe me, lots of white singers have tried. And the last one I'm going to show you, Freedom at Point Zero. Marty was gone. I don't remember whether Grace was on this album or not. But it's got Jane, which is by far the best song. That was a radio hit, rocks. You know, he's got, what was the guy's name? Mickey Thomas singing. I wonder how Marty would have sounded singing Jane. I can hear him singing Jane in my head. But anyways, I'm going to say this is the worst of their 70s albums. And I'm stopping there because I don't know, all the 80s albums, and nor do I really want them. So an important band initially in the 60s who just kind of transmogrified into this commercial vehicle in the mid to late 70s, where I cannot help but hear it as 60s survivors just keep on trucking, keep those limos and cash flowing so I can smoke my doobies and drink my beer. Whether that's the way it was or not, it's the way I choose to see it. So I'm going to stop here at 46. It's been another long one. Matt Wilson signing out. Until next time.